Jalen Hurts was named the Big 12 Athlete of the Year.
I did see that.
I'm interested to see. I know AskITB over at InsideTheBirds.com, there was some debate and some conversation about how he'll be used in the offense. I know there's been a lot of talk about that. We're going to get into some of that and more as Andrew DiCecco joins us live here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline for another edition of Football at 4 powered by InsideTheBirds.com. You can read Andrew's work at 97.3 ESPN.com. Had a good article over the weekend about linebackers that we talked about last week, but I want to kind of get off the defensive side of the ball that we've been talking about for last couple of days and travel back over to offense, Andrew. How much do you anticipate Jalen Hurts actually seeing the field in 2020? And I asked this question with the thought process of the potential of mini camp, coming a couple of weeks or even a month or so down the road.
Well, I certainly assume that the thought process behind taking Jalen Hurts in the second round is that they anticipate getting him on the field fairly quickly. And now that there's going to be a little bit more certainty with mini camps and he'll have a little bit more time to get acclimated to the playbook and up to speed, I think you'll probably see him get into, maybe not in the first few weeks, but kind of see like how Michael Vick got into the offense in 2009. I think you'll see him in some red zone packages and on some running plays and probably some trick plays where he rolls out and throws the football. But you certainly don't take somebody that high without a plan, and I do think that he'll be a part of the offense in 2020.
That's an interesting part there. And one of the numbers about him that really stand out to me is how good he was in the red zone area. I mean, he was one of the most productive players, if not the most productive player in the entire country when it comes to scoring in the red zone. And you wonder if that just adds another layer to the Eagles offense because Carson Wentz's numbers in the red zone, third and fourth downs, he's one of the best in the league in that area as well. So you add Hurts. Do you think he is best used as a red zone threat?
I do, but if the offense is rolling, if Carson Wentz brings him down there, I always question, taking your signal caller off the field to replace him with, another quarterback. If Carson Wentz takes you down there and he's in a rhythm, quarterback plays all about rhythm and timing. And I think that when, you get a quarterback that can take you down the field like Carson Wentz has proven he can do, it's kind of hard to take him off the field and replace him with maybe possibly a more athletic quarterback that can do a little bit more things and spread teams out. I think will be a part of the offense though moving forward. Like I said, they have to. I'm assuming they have a plan for him with investing that kind of draft capital in him.
I know if you were to suggest like, hey, I want to see him on the field for X amount of percentage of the plays, is there something to kind of validate taking a guy in the second round that if he's out there, I don't know, however, Taysom Hill, for example, and I hate to keep comparing him to him, but he had 27 rushes last year and he caught the ball. Let's see, how many passes did he catch? He caught 19 passes last year. So he had 19 receptions and 27 runs. Is that enough for you to validate a Hurts pick?
Yeah, but let's not forget that Taysom Hill had a few seasons in the Saints system. So Jalen Hurts might not have that kind of production in his first season. But when you look at Jalen's skill set, I think that and what he can potentially bring to the offense and add a new layer to it, like you alluded to, I think that maybe 3 to 4 plays a game could possibly be within reasonably to expect in 2020.
One thing I look at with Jalen Hurts and the 3 quarterbacks dressing is, how does this impact another player who will not be able to dress now because you're going to have someone like Jalen Hurts who might squeak in there for a play or two. I mean, this can totally change. What if somebody else goes down and now you don't have somebody who's available because you have to dress Jalen Hurts?
Well, Hunter, that's interesting. And now the game day active roster is now expanded from 46 to 48 this season. So I think that when you look at the quarterback situation, particularly on the Eagles, and you have Carson, Nate Sudfeld, who's going to be the number 2, but you also have this talented offensive threat in Jalen Hurts, so you invested draft capital, and I think that you're going to have to activate all 3. Possibly that other spot, like you said, it could come down to probably the trenches, I would think. You're going to have to probably want to activate another offensive lineman in the event that something happens and you need somebody to step in.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. And Hurts is an interesting weapon, and I'm very intrigued as we've battled Hunter back and forth about, what kind of role will he have and whether or not that was worth a second-round pick. But a guy who wasn't drafted at all, Boston Scott. And there's a lot of people wondering, they just assume he's going to make the team and he's going to have a role. How do you see Boston Scott fitting into this offense? Because he's a guy that I feel like this offseason, we've talked about Miles Sanders. We've talked about, adding a veteran running back. What's Hurts going to do? But what about the role Boston Scott could have to add to this offense?
Well, I think Boston Scott adds an interesting dimension to the Eagles offense, right? So you really saw him come on late last season down the stretch. It was an integral role to what the Eagles, to that playoff push. And with Miles Sanders, I think Scott can kind of complement him in that he's proven that he can be, adequate receiver out of the backfield, but he also can, grind out those tough yards, and he's very elusive in the open field, and he's great after the catch. So while I don't think that he'll be a number 2 running back, I think he's best slotted as a number 3 given his skill set. I think that he'll add, and now you're getting him for a full season. Let's not forget last season he was on the practice squad until injuries forced him onto the active roster. But I think now that you get a full season or a full off season and another season with him, you'll see him as, a key offensive player, and then also possibly on special teams as a kick returner.
This question was actually from Ask ITB on InsideTheBirds.com, and Adam Kaplan put his 2 cents in, but I'm curious on yours. Do you think that Miles Sanders can get 1,700 yards from scrimmage this upcoming year?
Yeah, this is something that I've kind of, been back and forth with over the past few weeks, and I can absolutely see that happening, Hunter. And you could I think he's probably slotted for about 18 to 20 touches a game. With a few of those being receptions out of the backfield. And he can be a 3-down running back, but, I feel like the Eagles to kind of best preserve Miles Sanders for late in the season, I think that, I think that 16 to 18 touches per game is probably right in the range that they're looking for. But he's always been, last season he's been somebody that maximizes his touches and really proved to be an explosive player when his number was called. So I think that when you look at what Miles Sanders can bring to the offense, I think, 1,700 is probably, I had him at 1,650. So that's right there.
Yeah, I know Sanders has been kind of the MVP chat guy. He's been talking. He's been very colorful about it. But, I really, I'm interested to see how that backfield is worked out because, in Doug's tenure, he has kind of had this, committee. And is that mainly because of necessity that he hasn't had that guy? And can Miles Sanders finally be the guy to where we see him out there, 75, 80% of the time? Can he handle that kind of role?
I think Eagles fans are going to see what Doug Peterson can do with a feature running back. I think that he did running back by committee, Mike, in the past, because that's really he was kind of, coaching with one hand tied behind his back. Sometimes injuries dictated that, personnel dictated that. So I think now that when he actually has, a young ascending feature, running back, I think that you'll see him utilize him to, and help take add another dimension to the offense and take it to the next level. And like I said, 16, 18 touches a game, you could see him with 1,300 yards on the ground and about 350 to 400 through the air.
Now, I know Adam had suggested at Inside the Birds during the podcast that he saw about 15 to 18 touches for Miles Sanders. And when I saw that and I read that, I'm thinking to myself, all right, he gets 15 to 8 touches. You got Deshaun Jackson, you got Zach Ertz, you got Dallas Goedert, you got JJ hopefully taking a step forward. It seems that it's going to be tough to keep everybody happy or keep everybody involved in that offense.
Yeah, and that's another reason why, as I'm going through all the different players that they have, and they have an embarrassment of riches at the offensive skill set positions, and
which sounds bizarre, right? Which sounds bizarre the way they ended last year.
Right. So that's a good problem to have, Mike. Obviously, you want as many weapons as you can to really maximize. You have this quarterback, and he's 27 years old. He's entering his prime. You want to make the most out of that. But that's why I was thinking that Jalen Hurts, his impact is going to be fairly limited, in my opinion, because of all the other guys that you have to get the football to. You have Dallas Goedert, who had 58 receptions last year, ninth most out of all NFL tight ends. And that was playing behind Zach Ertz, who had 88 receptions. So you saw what he can do. He led the Eagles in yards in the playoff game against Seattle. It's definitely a good problem to have. I think Miles Sanders will definitely find a way to get his touches. Then you'll have some Boston Scott sprinkled in, and then we kind of talked about getting that downhill thumper into the mix, and he'll be certainly in the fold for the tough yard situations and goal line situations.
That's great that you just brought that up, because the conversation about Freeman, Carlos Hyde, even Shady was definitely big over the last few weeks. And is it crazy for me to think that they don't really need that veteran running back? You can find running backs all over. I mean, Philip Lindsay, hell, a couple years ago, we were screaming for Josh Adams to get the rock, and Corey Clement was undrafted. And I know that if Miles Sanders goes down, you need someone to rely on, but is that really Shady McCoy, who was banged up at this part of his career? I just feel like they have those undrafted guys that they could rely on, and they don't actually need that veteran running back.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more there. Let's say Miles Sanders does miss some time, misses a half of a game or whatever. Is Shady McCoy really that much better than, Mike Warren and Elijah Holyfield and Boston Scott, albeit, a couple of those guys are unproven, but what does Shady McCoy really add at this stage of his career? We're talking about a guy who was inactive for the Super Bowl. I know he would like to come back here and end his career in Philadelphia, but from the Eagles' standpoint, I think that when you look at, you always want to bet on upside, and a lot of these guys that they have there, Elijah Holyfield and Mike Warren, they entered the draft a year early. So they didn't really even have, if they stay for their senior seasons, they're draftable players. So the Eagles have a lot of upside at that position. Now it's kind of just, okay, can we get these guys up to speed? Where are they at, let's say the August point? And if they don't feel confident in those guys at that point, well, then maybe you reach out to a LeSean McCoy, who's probably still going to be out there. Or an Isaiah Crowell, who's 27 years old. Some of these guys will probably still be out there.
Yeah, Andrew DiCecco. Football at 4 here, powered by InsideTheBirds.com on the Sports Bash. Andrew, I keep, I thought if you could have got, and I guess you still could get Freeman, he's available, or a Hyde. Those guys add something. I don't know that there's somebody else, like McCoy. At that point, I think you're just bringing a guy in to bring a guy in, and I don't know, as we just mentioned, heck, I just went down the list of guys. How are you going to get the ball? I didn't even mention Greg Ward, who was one of your leading receivers last year. What kind of role does he have in the offense? How many touches does a guy like that even get? And again, he was a guy who was one of your top pass catchers over the last 5 games last year.
Yeah, Greg Ward, he was the top, like you said, he was the top receiving option. He's a guy I've always been really high on. I just always thought that he just needed an opportunity to get on the field, and the rest would take care of itself. But now he's going to be pushed down the depth chart, or is going to be certainly limited because of all the guys all the weapons that they've added around him. But I think that kind of plays more to what Ward can. I think he'll be even more effective with the less snaps, because you can use him. Let's forget he was a very, very effective quarterback at the University of Houston. He also adds that dimension where he could, on some trick plays, we haven't really seen him get to throw the football. He has an arm on him, and he's extremely athletic. And then, he's proven to be a very reliable, tough, sure-handed slot receiver, which is needed. And the Eagles have had a ton of guys in the past couple of seasons that have been reliable in catching the football. But you have one there in Greg Ward, a known commodity now. I think that he'll see a significant decrease in his snap counts, but he's another guy that people forget about.
Because of his injury and because of where he is when the season's going to start, Alshon Jeffrey's production really hasn't been talked about when it comes to this town, and obviously because of what happened last year. But how much do you think that Alshon actually has in the tank when he does return?
Well, I think that's a good question, because a lot of it, if you really look at the receivers as they currently stand, there's not a ton of size there. I believe J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, is the of the healthy receivers, he's the tallest at 6'2". Alshon gives them that jump ball that, he's going to very effective in those contested catches situations. And you really need a player like that to the receiving corps, because now you got a ton of fast guys. You got an unknown, a wild card in J.J., who I think is going to be in for a sophomore rebound. But, that's, again, you're gambling on that. You're assuming that he's going to take those necessary steps in these idle months to progress in his career. But Alshon's their tall receiver right now. You really don't have another guy in the pipeline. So you're really banking on him to return from that injury and be the player that he was, in 2017. He obviously isn't going to be a burner. He never will be. But when you want a trusty option that can go up and get the football, between the hashes and in the red zone, he's the only guy right now on the depth chart that's proven he can do that consistently.
Now, let me ask you this. We know about, obviously, Jeffrey's injury and that he's probably going to be on the PUP list. And then we mentioned Ward. We got J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Deshaun Jackson. Is there another receiver that we're not hearing about that you're interested in come training camp?
Yeah, well, Marquise Goodwin's a guy that I've always liked. When he's been healthy, he's been extremely effective. He's got electrifying speed. He just hasn't been healthy lately, and that's always been the problem in the past couple of seasons with Eagles receivers. Like they've struggled, with production. They've also struggled with injury. So I think that Marquise Goodwin, you pretty much got him for effectively nothing. But when he's been on the field for the 49ers and even earlier in his career with the Buffalo Bills, he's been a guy that defenses have to account for. He can take the top off the defense. So it'll be interesting to see how he transitions to into the Eagles offense of limited snaps and kind of getting ahead on that playbook. But he's far from a lock, so he's going to be in competition with John Hightower, Quez Watkins, Greg Ward for those final spots. And another guy who I'm really intrigued by is John Hightower, who I've mentioned on the show before. I got a chance to see him at the East West Shrine Bowl. He's about 6'1", so he's another plus 6 foot guy, and he doesn't have the aggressive mindset or the physicality of an Alshon Jeffrey, but he does have that vertical element to his game. He ran a 4.43, I believe, at the NFL Combine, and he really impressed me at the Shrine Bowl and winning those contested catch situations, which I hadn't seen on film, getting open consistently, tracking the football well down the field. I understand that he's gonna be behind the 8 ball as will most of the rookies. He'll have his opportunity. He just needs to, maximize his opportunities because he'll be probably in a 3-man race for a roster spot.
Which is interesting. When we just talked about all these guys, I didn't mention any of the rookies. I almost completely blanked my mind that, you still have Jalen Reagor, who we haven't fit into a role into this offense. As you just mentioned, guys like Watkins and Hightower and Marquise Goodwin, who are all battling. So I'm very intrigued if they get a mini camp and training camp here, which is looking more and more likely that there will be a training camp. In fact, I think today the news that came out was more likely that teams will remain at their facilities for training camp, that you're going to see teams get out here and practice at their facilities here for camp. And how Doug and these other offensive minds that they've brought in here. Remember, Andrew, for the fans out there, they have brought in a lot of new offensive minds that they're adding here. And how are they going to utilize all these new guys? I mean, you're not just bringing back Deshaun Jackson and having a healthy Jackson. You're also adding all these other guys that we barely even scratched the surface about talking about.
Exactly. And that's why I've been cautioning folks to kind of be patient because, you've added all these weapons, but it's not just going to be, a plug and play. You throw these guys in the offense and they put up numbers, right? You're adding, Rich Scangarello, who's coming over who has that Kyle Shanahan background from the San Francisco offense. You're bringing in from Mississippi State, Andrew Briner, who's thrived in that RPO system there. And you got Marty Morningweg in there. So there's all these different minds, and you're going to see a lot of different ideas and concepts and especially in protections, play actions, running game, and screens. So the fact that the Eagles can get mini camps, there's not many teams that would benefit more given their situation than the Eagles. So you're definitely going to see some new wrinkles there. And they also have to get a lot of these players integrated in the offense.
I hate to think about injuries, but obviously, as we know, it's such a big part of the game. If they only keep 2 tight ends in Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, what do you think they would do if someone goes down? I mean, it would change their philosophy big time with all the 12 personnel sets that they do. I mean, I know they have a lot of wide receivers, so I guess is the answer they would just run way less 12 personnel sets?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can go an extra. They would probably go an extra tackle there, but week to week, if they had an injury, throughout the practice week, you could probably utilize that. The rosters are expanding from 53 to 55, so I would imagine they're going to stash with one of their 12 practice squad spots. They're probably going to stash a tight end, whether that be Josh Perkins, Alex Ellis, or another guy who doesn't make the 53-man roster around the league who they like. You could always elevate them throughout the week and then plug them in on game day. So they'll have that option, but should something happen in the middle of the game, you're going to see a lot less 12 personnel, obviously, and you might see an extra tackle, be it Matt Pryor or Jordan Mailata, possibly.
I like, it's funny because we're into June now, and a lot of times you're starting to think about these mini camps would have already been going on, and it's kind of interesting that we might get them. We might get these mini camps and get the chance to see a lot of these guys, because I think on the offensive side, which we kind of focused in on today during Football at 4, the Eagles have a lot of questions. And my question for you, Andrew, will be, do you anticipate that there's a player who doesn't make this team that you're going to be like, man, that guy could have helped them?
Probably. I mean, if off the top of my head, Mike, I would say Marquise Goodwin. He's a guy who I mentioned. He has, his track speed, and he's going to be deprived of that offseason. And given how many weapons that the Eagles have, obviously, as we've outlined, there's reps in practice are going to be extremely limited. So you're not going to have all these different opportunities to impress like receivers trying to make the Eagles would have in recent years with, there hasn't been a whole bunch of, top end talent. So he's certainly going to have to impress, but he's also 30 years old, and you just invested, you took 2 late round flyers on John Hightower and Quez Watkins, who both offer upside to different degrees. So yeah, he would be a guy that, I think would benefit from more reps, and could be a guy on the outside looking in that you might be like, wow, imagine him with Deshaun and Jalen Reagor to, as those vertical threats.
All right. Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew DiCecco. He'll be back on Friday. We'll get into more NFL stuff and hopefully some more information on if minicamp will be happening and when, as the NFL has kind of been quiet the last couple of days. Tomorrow, Jeff Mosher is here for Football at 4. Adam Kaplan on Thursday's show. At DiCecco NFL on Twitter, and of course every Tuesday and Friday here on Football at 4. Thanks, pal.
Yep, you got it.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.